Welcome back. We finally have Crownshot on the show. Thank you for your patience. It's been late. We are going to be dividing this on YouTube into 2 separate episodes. We talked to Danon, the general manager of the Golden Guardians, about formats and LCS playoffs. Now we're here with Crownshot to talk about LEC playoffs. So welcome. First time on the show. And how are things going for SK right now? Because it was kind of a roller coaster towards the end of the split. You guys in the past couple weeks, you managed to take that win off of Rogue, but then you end up going 1-2 in your final week of competition. And how has the variance been in LEC overall? Because it has been at the end of this split, everyone beating everyone for the most part. How should we read into that? Is it just the super week being unable to prepare for teams, or is it that you think these playoffs are going to be incredibly competitive?
So I think a part is BO1s and like teams just drafting bad sometimes, and obviously there's variance in BO1s. And to touch on the other point, obviously going 1-2 kinda sucks.
I think your camera just went off, by the way.
I know.
He's come back.
You're
back.
Sorry, man. Anyway, yeah, obviously going 1-2 sucks. That it's kind of a shame that the last game didn't matter for standings, but I think if we could have definitely won that game if we played early stage better, because we're in a good position on the map, but then we just end up giving kills and then dying to TPs and then dying again. And against G2, they were just, I think G2 is the best team in LEC right now again, personally. So I don't find losing to them that big of a deal. I think the game was also winnable. But other than that, yeah, that's pretty much it.
First of all, camera off. Yeah, put it back on. Yeah. Here's the one thing, mate. The only thing there, though, is you just like glossed over a lot of things. You threw in a lot of points there.
G2 is the best team.
Yeah, you can ask me more
you completely ignored your ultimate sin, which is not beating Fnatic. All you had to do was beat these fucks, put them out of the playoffs. I could have been dunking on your boy already. We'll all be having a nice time, but instead you had to go and fucking lose, win trade with fucking Nemesis. LS probably set the whole thing up, Puppet Master style, so everyone got in the playoffs.
No, sadly, the game, the Fnatic was already in playoffs. Otherwise, but yeah, it would have been obviously good.
Would have been epic, yeah.
Yes. But they were already in playoffs because of like the way other games went.
Sure.
Because Schalke actually managed to go on like a 7-0 run, which is pretty impressive in itself. But yeah, I mean, it was for sure an interesting season. It's like Fnatic is 9-9 and they're 4th, right? That's still kind of weird to me, I think. But the season was definitely competitive, even though like the top teams did start losing now a bit. Like,
but let's go back to
dropping game.
As Monty said, we can't just like go. So anyway, yeah, I was playing this one team thing. I actually think G2 is probably the best team in Europe again. Ergo probably the best in the world. Well, let's just give over that and then played against XL once. I brought a cake. Like, let's go back to that. Like, wait a minute.
Exactly.
It's like G2 Come on, give us something on this. Is it from scrims? Just what you're seeing? Why do you think they're the best?
Okay, so
they're 5-0 in the last 2 weeks. First off, let's start there.
So first off, I have like 6-0, 5-0. Well, I don't know what's happening with my camera. Sorry. It's back again. Anyway, I just gotta pray that it works. Okay, so I think Caps is having an MVP split. First of all, I think their bot lane is playing good now. Their top lane stepped. I just think they're not back to their old form yet, but they're playing much better. And the best thing the thing they were best at last year, right, was playing the map from like and trading up in situations where other teams wouldn't. And you could see it against us. They were always first on the map, always like taking towers off of good tempo. This is what they were known for, even against like SKT and teams like this, right? So I think this is part of the reason why, yeah.
From my perspective, I think that G2 had a really rough time with Perks's family issues at the start of the split, especially while they were trying to re-swap Caps and Perks back to their old
And they even had a
roles.
week off, remember?
And then he wasn't there. So I think their practice has been super limited overall. So I guess for me, it doesn't surprise me to see them back in this form, because this is kind of what we expected of them. And all they had to do was to, because of the championship points and the way that the LEC playoffs work out, they just kind of had to get themselves in there. And guess what? They're already the second seed again. So they have a lot of safety, I think, being in the upper bracket. I think, as you say, that we've seen teams with strong early games decrease in power as the meta kind of gotten figured out over the course of the season. And so we've seen teams like Rogue or teams that scale well like G2 being able to control the late game a little bit more. Same thing with Team Liquid in North America. So it makes sense that, they would be getting stronger and maybe Mad Lions getting a little bit weaker as the split goes on. But there's also the fact that there's going to be this massive patch, and you guys don't play this weekend either in playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a couple weeks for you guys. So you're going to have more time to get used to this patch than, say, LCS, which is playing in 3 days.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah. For sure, BO5s are always, or playoffs overall are always different, because let's say theoretically, there would be a team playing from lower bracket into their Worlds qualification or into finals or something. They would play like up to 15, 20 games, which is more than a whole split on one patch.
Yes.
While during the season, you can actually end up playing, because of the break in between, you can actually play 2 games on one patch. Then there's the break, the patch changes. So you only play 2 games on a patch, as opposed to 5, 10, 8. So the meta is much more. Plus, obviously, the main difference is that you prepare fully for one team now, right? While in BO1s, you just had to kind of focus on good fundamentals and just being good overall as a team. But here you can focus much more on specific teams. So
yeah, one factor I want to throw in as well for G2 is like another trend that we've now just seen, because it applies to last year as well, if you remember, is like, listen, it's not a meme, when they go on and on about Wonder just like playing World of Warcraft raids. Like, he really does. Like, he's one of those guys where like he's just so good. And luckily, like I said, you don't have to play carry top lane all the time if top. It's just not the role anyway, especially with the players they have. That like, dude, it really looks like, dude, he is the one that's like, I always say like G2 as a team feel like they have like the old quality that like the old Expected so as Fnatic had, where they could just like fuck around in the regular split, but then they would always be amazing when the playoffs came, because they would kind of be like remember, they'd won so many times and been to so many worlds that they were like, listen, we don't start playing on week 1, kid. We start playing on like, week 6 or whatever, as long as we're not out of the tournament. It's not even G2. It's just fucking Wonder has that mentality, because every time that you think he's had a split that's shit, in the last few weeks, he just starts smurfing on motherfuckers. And I saw it in some of these games here. Like, he just looks like a monster again. And when you consider the only person everyone thought was as good overall as him in the top lane can't even play in the fucking playoffs because Alphari sat at home. Like, am I supposed to take a 30% self-esteem cut as well, Astralis Group? So as a result, like, as long as Wonder wants to, he can just carry these. He could probably just win the championship for them at this point.
I mean, Alphari this last week looked so far gone. He looked like he had been mentally boomed into an alternate dimension. Like, I appreciate that Origin, when it came down to it, when their season was on the line, at least they put him on the carry champs and said, here's your chance. Like, this is our best opportunity to actually win these games. But holy shit, did that guy look just
I'm basically
done.
He was
just done.
I'm basically low-key. I've been doing it even when he came on the Crackdown. Low-key, just constantly trying to convince Alphari, like, you don't have to be an OG, So, like, I basically want it to be like the Truman Show, where at the end, spoiler, he just figures out the solution is get out of the Truman Show. So, in the same sense, Alphari, it's not like, oh, but who's our support? And have I worked well enough? And have I been diligent? Just get the fuck out of OG. Go to, like, Fnatic in the offseason, TS. There's going to be loads of teams, mate. Just get the fuck out of OG. You can't stay there to death.
I want him on Rogue.
You're too good for that team.
I want him on Rogue, personally. I think that.
Yeah, but here's why that won't happen. Because since Rogue was a dumpster tier org, let's just be real, cards on the table. This is going to be a controversial statement. Rogue sort of doesn't deserve their roster. What I mean by that is financially, Rogue did nothing to put themselves in a position to get these players. They had those players in the National Leagues. Props to whoever scouted them. Great job there. And then they promoted them to the LEC. And much like Mad Lions, except Mad Lions at least went and did more scouting work, it turned out they were all mustered as well. Most of them made it. So the problem I have is this, Monty. Orgs that haven't had the big name players before, and especially orgs that mad overperform, are the number one criminal offenders for just sticking with what you have. And so their logic would be like, but we can't. It's like all these discussions we've had on these talk shows, this split. Me and Dom have tried to have interesting discussions about, imagine if you just took Alfari and put him instead of a Romeo. Wouldn't Mad Lions be like best team in the world? And every argument's like, no, but Orama does this for the team. He's a good guy. It's like, we don't care about that. We're talking about the fact that if there was no emotional component and you just were making the best team, if it was Space Jam, you'd put Alfari in there, of course. So I agree with you. Of course, I'd put him on a team like Rogue. But I bet Rogue's like so mindful, like we must all go to. We came up together. We have to stay together. So yeah, and you'll lose together, mate. So see you tomorrow together. Fucking hell. It's going to be one of those, I'll guarantee you.
I will say about Rogue as an organization that at least when they first entered the LEC, they were, I know from behind the scenes information and talking to people, that most people were mad that Rogue was way overpaying for their talent. So it's not like they're poor. I don't know if that's still true because that was a while ago.
That makes them even worse as an org, Monty, if you overpay Senkox and fucking like Woolite or whatever it was. No, they had actually... No, dude, wait a second. Let's just remember, you remember this, Crowdy, the fucking Season 9 Spring Split starting lineup was like Senkox.
Yes.
It was fucking... Dude, what was the bot lane? Hikyu, Wadid. Holy fuck, if they were overpaid for that, Monty's just made a case against Rogue way harder than I'd ever made.
Yes. I'm not saying that it makes Rogue look good. I'm just saying that they weren't afraid to spend. That is what I am saying.
Okay.
So you can interpret that information based on their rosters however you like. But I'm just saying they're not financially incapable of getting a star player on there because they're not one of the teams that at least as of a couple years ago when I had this information, at that time, they were not necessarily underspending. Don't know what it is like now. But I think that they could, in theory, make some big signings and improve the roster if they are willing to move in that direction. But as you say, Thorin, the battle is always, well, we just finished as the top team in summer, so do we actually look to make improvements? And we've seen arguments to the contrary on that. Look at G2. Now, we could have said, okay, these players are all maybe top 2, 3 in their roles in Europe, which has definitely historically been true. But even when Mickey was having hand issues and it wasn't clear that he was ever going to be able to return to form, they weren't out there aggressively courting a new support or anything like that, right? So, I don't know.
But that's to be fair though, he had also just found that like book in a used bookstore that was like how to make your hands work again. He was like, oh cool, step 1, don't have pain in your hands. And apparently he was just like, oh, no pain now. Because that story still doesn't make any sense to me. That like everyone's just cool with that story that he literally read a book and his hands just hurt anymore. Like y'all are just willing to accept anything, aren't you?
All right, so let's dive into
this motherfucker's getting hand withdrawals. Give me a break.
Let's dive into this playoff bracket because the team besides SK, of course, that we obviously have to talk about is Schalke for going on this crazy run and beating all of the top teams in these playoffs after the addition of Gilius and I don't even understand how Abadage improved this much or was able to perform at this kind of level given the games that we have seen from him so far this year. And unfortunately for you guys, you're in the position where you have to play against this team and you're already in the losers bracket. What are your thoughts on the improvement of Schalke and where they've been strong?
Okay, so I think that only they only lost to Rogue and us before they started the massive win streak, and I think their style is very controlled, and they like to play solid team comps with like Corky, Sejuani, like just cookie cutter, I guess. Like, my camera died again. Sorry.
You've muted yourself.
You muted yourself.
There.
Oh no.
What?
Oh, yeah, there you go. You're back.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, keep going.
Anyway, they play very standard, right? I think this is a tendency of teams with Dylan Falco always. He always if you
They
remember
played
Schalke
Thorin,
from
basically,
last
yeah. They played super
year.
standard league,
Yeah,
of course.
if you remember last year Schalke in spring, there used to be 8 game, like they used to play Alistar, Akali, Kennen, and a jungler. This used to be the drafting recipe, or for like the whole, like, you know,
Sure.
upset play, like Ezreal and Kai'Sa is very, very, very standard. But the way that they play very controlled, like, for example, they do good things in games when like Abadage is playing weak side on Corki. Dreams is always hovering halfway into fog with Tankage to cover, and they play the map really well, and they control Drakes really well, and their drafts are always good. They have good game plans, so they just play really solid league. I feel like I also think that it is a bit, probably maybe other teams like falling down a bit, but or like teams catching up to Mad Lions in the meta read and the drafting and all of this, for example. But you do have to give them credit, right? I think their solo laners and jungler are playing very well, and their bot lane is very good at playing control. They play like mainly Senna and Ezreal and like Tankage, and I mean, I'm excited to play against them because I like playing against good teams. So you have to give credit where credit is due. Yeah.
By the way, since he referenced them there, obviously, everyone's going to talk about the Gilius angle because that was basically like the main narrative that everyone hyped up. And then beyond that, Abadage not being terrible is a big deal because he was actually pretty good in some of these games. But I also think like the guy who basically hasn't gotten the credit is Odo Amne, because that guy he was already good before they were good. He's like the sleeper carry of that team. That guy is so fucking good right now.
Yeah, he was playing really good in spring too, and they had a big lose streak.
Yes.
So I think they're like a more solo lane focused team. Like they don't really play for bot that much. So this is obviously an angle where we could have an advantage because this is how we play. It's obviously apparent to anyone that watches. And also an advantage of these playoffs is that, in my opinion, 2 of the top AD carries didn't even make it to playoffs, like Patrick and Upset.
Yes.
So it's like the responsibility will be on me to do well for sure.
I mean, I feel
so
like
what's
that's
you. What's you? What you
Yeah, I
do?
was gonna say, how's that
just be behind 10 minutes in the game. Fucking hell.
I feel nothing's changed there. Okay, SK still SK. Got it. All right.
Obviously, I mean, I don't want to show anything in our game against Fnatic if it doesn't mean anything, right? But I can assure you, we have strategies prepared for sure. But I mean, it's like a clash of styles, I guess. One team plays more for solo lanes and stuff, and our team plays more for bot lanes. So it will be interesting to watch for sure.
Monty, I've got a question for you. Yeah. Is it that time of the show where I do that thing I do that only I can do, where what I do is I say the thing that no one else is saying, but is so clearly got merit to it, but then it upsets people and hurts a lot of their feelings, and then they misread everything I say and just tweet and get really angry about it? By that preamble, I think yes. So here we go. Everyone thinks, right, just like LEC, y'all are just going to, do clickbait and just talk about Gilius and go on about Gilius. No, I've got a take on this, right? Which is, by the way, I'm totally on board with the idea that like Gilius is one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, that Schalke has turned things around. Look how amazing, like some of those, like that Kazakhs game he had earlier, like 2 weeks ago, was fucking monster. Yeah, he was so sick. But the tweet that Twitchshot made this week, actually, like a part of my soul died when I read that. So Twitchshot made a tweet where he basically said, if Schalke complete the miracle run, so, you make this run and you get into playoffs, Gilius, he basically said, like, how could you argue against Gilius being the MVP of the split? Point number 1, Quickshot, he didn't play fucking half the games. Point number 2, he wasn't even the MVP of all those games. Point number 3, so does Larson is he just not the best anymore because Gilius had a bunch of games on a bad team? What the fuck is that? Like, listen, I love Quickshot for certain things. He's a great showman. He's a very good play-by-play caster. He does a great job hosting the desk. But this motherfucker needs some, he needs to check into the Betty Ford clinic for rehab on Reddit narratives because, homie, you are this close to overdosing. Like, see, I'm concerned about you. This is an intervention, Quickshot. Everyone on this call loves you, and we love what you bring to the show, but please, just put down the Reddit narratives. It's ruining your life.
I mean, Gilius isn't even the best jungler in the LEC. That's
he definitely had a lot of impact. We only played half the games, for fuck's sake. What was the MVP? Like 5 of them or something. Like that ain't the MVP of the split, is it? I get his premise. Like if he'd just said like one of the most improved players, I'm with you, but he oversold the angle.
I would also argue that Gilius got more MVPs than he should because of the narrative of him joining the team.
I made this point on Twitter. There was that last one. I can't remember if he got it on the Abidage game, but there was one where everyone was like
when Abidage was on Zoe and crushing people.
They were like Gilius again. I was like, no, in the other games, like no, you're just doing this because of that. Like you're just saying it for every fucking game now. Like it's not the MVP every time they win, you know.
I mean, it's kind of the same. It's also kind of like the vote is a bit of a popularity vote at this point. And there was also me who won. I think there's like 2 that I shouldn't have won. There was one game where Limit had like, I don't know, like 90% kill participation with Bard, was hitting like 3-4 man ults, tunnel stuns, but obviously I just have more fans. But obviously, like, he is a big part, but I think if I would have to vote personally for MVP, I would vote for Caps. That's who I would vote for, or Larson. Like, I mean, no, my vote would go for Caps because I go back to the game where they played against Rogue, and if they would lose that one, they would be like 5-9 at that point. And he ended up stealing Nash and carrying team fights and doing this and doing this. And after that, he had absolutely monster games. And yeah, my vote would go for Caps personally.
Nothing wrong with that.
I think it's basically like Caps or Larson, depending on how you're feeling about it. I think the knock against Caps is obviously they started the split kind of weak, and the consistent performance. I mean, part of that is Caps switching back to his role, but we do have to consider that he didn't have necessarily the best performances, and G2 didn't have the best performances at the start of the season for both in and out of game reasons. So for me, I think sure, Caps has been super clutch, but it depends on whether you value that over the consistency that Larson has provided, I think, over the course of the split on Rogue.
It's also worth throwing in, unfortunately, Mad Lions have actually fucked themselves because since they were the best for most of the split, basically until this last week, but then they fell apart just a little bit on the last week. The fact that they've let Larson's team be ahead of them and Caps and G2 start to look really good means that those players who already were getting sort of extra credit for being really good on teams that didn't necessarily have all the best players, Mad Lions are screwed because what they needed to do to have the MVP was be in first place by far. Then people would have said, right, well, you still have to put a Mad Lions player in there. So then you start sorting out, like, should I put Kaiser, Shadow, Humanoid put times earlier in the split. The problem is if you then aren't even first, it's sort of like their narrative, because as we're saying, MVP is just a narrative award. Let's be real, it's not based on actual play. The problem is their narrative sort of went off a cliff, like their train went. Because I would have said before, like I would have had Kaiser or Shadow. I would have picked one of those two. Like I think
Kaiser.
Sometimes, like every time he's on Lee Sin, especially the jungle difference from Shadow has been mental, and Kaiser's just been very impressive for a support. So, but the problem is, I'm kind of with Crownie. If I look at like Caps and Larson relative to their teams, like, dude, their teams don't do any of this shit if they played like 10% worse. They're probably mid-table teams if they play 10% worse.
Yeah. I agree. And like, I think the problem is when we had this conversation about who was the MVP before Caps really entered the picture in the last couple of weeks, that it was pick who it is on Mad Lions. But if you have to pick between different players and they don't end up at the top of the table, then that narrative, like you say, just goes away, right?
Crownshot was in the mix, though.
Yeah, he was.
You know, once upon a time, he was in the mix. That is also because we did. Listen, I'm going to be real with Crownshot. It's also because we all think SK is not a very good team as well. So
yeah, I don't mind.
Just tell you, mate.
But I think there is an interesting thing about SK, and there's an interesting thing about Rogue heading into these playoffs, which is that, especially with Schalke, now. We do have to say, okay, Gilius didn't have as much experience with the lineup in the week where Schalke ended up losing to both SK and Rogue before they went on their giant win streak right now. But I want to know, even though this was 4 weeks ago, I would say SK and Rogue are, alongside Schalke, some of the most dangerous teams in the late game. When I watch Rogue and SK play, you know, a lot of the time, like you're saying, you play through bot lane on SK, but it's about you and your ability to carry the team out of the AD carry position in the late game. And that's where SK has really shined, in the same way that Rogue has played through Larson into the late game and tried to be a little bit more of a scaling team. So in that world, now that SK and Rogue are alongside Schalke, some of the most dangerous teams in the late game. When you when I watch Rogue and SK play, you know, a lot of the time, like you're saying, you play through bot lane on SK, but it's about you and your ability to carry the team out of the AD carry position in the late game. And that's where SK has really shined, in the same way that Rogue has played through Larson into the late game and tried to be a little bit more of a scaling team. So Schalke has more experience together, but keeping in mind that they lost to both you and Rogue, who are similar styles of teams in terms of waiting for the late game, do you think that gives you an advantage heading into these playoffs, or do you think that Schalke has stepped up so much since then? Like, what do you think the difference is between Schalke's skill level at the time you beat them and right now?
I mean, apparently they were already saying back then, I think I saw in their video before their week, like before we played them, right, that they were already doing good in scrims back then. They just couldn't translate it. So I think they are more slow, right, as a team.
Yes.
And this obviously does give us an advantage. For example, a team like G2 might just overforce against them, like they have like 3 times this year, and just end up throwing early, and then the game is like too far gone to come back. But I think more controlled teams do better against Schalke, for sure. So I do think that's an advantage for us. I would agree with your point. Yeah.
So, but you do agree that this is probably a relatively favorable matchup for you,
for us,
stylistically, I mean, right? Because they don't play through the bottom lane. So in theory, let me just theory craft this matchup. Sure. It's good for you because you're not going to have a lot of pressure on you. And you already are an excellent late game team fight performer, right? So if you can quietly farm up in lane and go toe to toe with Neon in the late game and beat,
which you can, by the way, because there will only be an AD carry in the lane half the fucking time. So problem solved there.
Yeah. So it seems to me that this is your chance to really shine as a player, because you are going to get exactly the kind of laning phase that really benefits you. And we've seen what happens when you get these big scaling AD carries, going back to your guys' kind of like unique Twitch strategy, and what you as a team can do with that scaling in the late game has been very impressive. So as cool as Schalke's narrative is, I think you guys have a pretty good matchup, actually.
I mean, I would tend to agree. Like, if I look at the series from my own perspective, I would for sure agree. Like, stylistically, if we figure out how to shut down what they're good at and play for what we are good at, I think we have a very good shot at beating them, especially because the meta is obviously dragon focused and all of this. So that's even more incentive to play bot, and I would agree for sure.
Also, I will just throw in there something that I've found in esports is there's also a factor. People probably know what I'm talking about if I explain it this way. If you I'll put it this way, say you're playing a game yourself and you're in a solo queue game where it's one that like you're supposed to lose this game. You're even doing like surrender votes. You're thinking, oh, this fucking game's over, but can it be over already? Like, oh, they haven't finished yet. You're waiting like 10 minutes for it to end. If you actually like try hard in that scenario, oftentimes you're like, what the fuck? We're almost back in this game. Like you suddenly get back in the game out of nowhere because first of all, your team originally thought the game was lost, so you were like wrecked. And then the other team is so far ahead, they get the opposite. They start thinking, well, we're going to win. Like we've got all the advantages. They can overpress. We can greed. We can go for things. We can just start a Baron we shouldn't for no reason when we could just take all the dragons. So in this scenario, it's been something I've noticed as a general trend. The problem I have with the Schalke Miracle Run is exactly that, is it had to be a miracle. Like where they began the Miracle Run, realistically, I don't care what they say. Internally, if you're Schalke, you didn't think it was possible to make playoffs until about 2 weeks ago. You thought these were games where it's like, listen, we're probably not making playoffs, so let's just try and look good. Let's try and play some good League of Legends. Let's try and get a job for next year. You just try hard because you have to for your career. It's only then, like, towards the end, that you're like, fuck, we might actually do this. Unfortunately, that sort of a team, once they come to playoffs, they don't have the blue shell anymore, guys. Like now they're just a team again. And unfortunately, I think in the playoffs, I don't think you're going to get this amazing Schalke that you had in these last few weeks. I don't want to hate on them, but I think SK will win this series.
Yeah, I agree. The thing is, when you feel like there's nothing online anymore, people just play. That's why
it frees you a bit.
Yeah, exactly. That's why Perks talked about Abedage being like faker online and all of this. When you play with no regrets, you don't care. You go for skirmishes, you go for 1v1 kills, you go for this. Because I remember last year in summer when we were on SK, we had like 8% chance of making playoffs the last week or something, and we ended up playing tiebreaker, and Schalke had 4, so they had even less. So I'm sure they were never thinking about making playoffs. They were just thinking, okay, Let's ruin some teams' chances. Let's try to look good. Let's try to look good for potential offers in next year. And it all ended up coming together. And also a 1.5 week break, or let's say 2 weeks average, also kind of like stops their momentum, right?
Yeah,
it cools them out. It stops their momentum. Maybe they go to scrims and they start losing scrims, or maybe the meta like.
You muted yourself.
Hello?
You're back.
There you go.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Just keep going, man.
Yeah.
Don't have to apologize, man. Just keep rolling.
The only thing you have to apologize for was ever saying Nemesis is a good mid laner. Everything else, you're cool, man. Just keep going.
Okay. Anyway, so like I think the break, like they're obviously on a hot streak, and if there's a time period between the next game, it benefits the other teams, not the team that's on a massive win streak, feeling like they own the league and nobody can beat them right now. And they're like, okay, we're beating everyone, and we have Faker in mid and all of this, right? Oh, but I would agree that I'm going into the series confidently, especially if we figure out the patch well and we know what to play for. I think we're a team that when we know what our win conditions are and how we are supposed to play the game, then the game goes smoothly. I also think our macro is pretty good for the league, probably mainly because of Trick. But I think that's one of the better things we're better at than other teams.
I'm glad he's contributing something.
So, so I think it's just best of 5 is best of 5 in the end, right? Like in best of ones, it's more about like flashy plays and God Gilius finding insane kicks and stuff. But I think the series will be very exciting. Though I'm glad I can actually play like a best of 5, right? Because if you compare what people at the start of summer, they put us 10th and 9th. I don't blame them. Whatever, they had no idea how everything will work out and which teams would collapse. But
it's not entirely unreasonable that given your roster changes, the fact that you had a guy moving from mid to top lane, like how are you supposed to understand how well Genax is going to perform, right?
By the way, Monty, listen, he's done it unintentionally because a lot of people do, but he has triggered me there. So this isn't a flame against Crownshot, but I'm going to flame something he did say there, which is another thing over this weekend that was tilting my motherfucking tits off, was when people kept quoting these percentage chances of people making the playoffs. Let me just go ahead and explain something to everyone. There is no HAL 9000 supercomputer on this planet that can calculate the percentage of anyone making any playoffs in a fucking video game. What are you talking about, guys? You know that those chances, the casters 1,000,000 times misexplained what the percentage meant. The percentage, as far as I know, was this, Monty. They calculated every possible scenario that could happen.
Correct.
And then if there was only 4% of the possible scenarios in which SK made it, Schalke, they said, instead of saying there are 4% of scenarios in which Schalke makes it, they kept saying they have a 4% chance. They do not have a 4% chance. That doesn't even make sense because none of that makes sense.
There's 4%.
Because as I say, there's no computer could calculate that.
There's 4% of scenarios, but it doesn't take into consideration current form or
teams. Exactly.
The confidence of winning a match, right?
They take every game as 50-50, but obviously
which is the flaw right there.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously the chance of Schalke winning a game.
Goodbye. Sorry, he'll be back.
When they're completely reading the meta and playing with no regrets and playing against a team that's kind of locked in playoffs already and completely underestimating them, it's not 50-50. It's probably like 80-20 or like 70, 75.
Exactly.
So obviously they do it for the narrative. So when every time Schalke win, they're like, okay, the chance is 12% now. Schalke Miracle Run, can it actually happen? So people tune in and watch. And obviously I did word it wrong, but
no, everyone was doing that, mate. Don't worry, I can't say it.
So for sure, there were no way the games were 50-50. Schalke was playing
It's just a mistake, kind of like you, Bind, didn't talk push to talk to turn camera off and mute mic. So that's it for it's all right.
Yeah, I had to replace 2 cameras before the show because none of them worked, and this one I have no clue why. Sorry.
It's fine.
But yeah, anyway, the split has been really like, for sure. It's also the online format. 100%. It's 100% affecting the standings. Probably ours as well. Schalke's for sure. Fnatic G2 being worse for sure. Medline's wrong being better. All of this is affected by online. There's no denying it. Like everybody, if you're not delusional, you
there you go.
That's
what happens when a new
because...
school player isn't on the best team. He can actually admit it.
Yep.
Now, if SK had been top with Rogue, he'd have to go, I don't know if online does affect it. You know, like, maybe we could have done he's in like 5th place or so. He can just admit it. He doesn't have he has no skin in the game on this one, boys.
I will say
what I mean, to live in denial.
I will say what I appreciate about Crownshot Camera is at the very least I don't have to kiss him for a frog to turn into a prince on our show, right? At least we got to skip that step to get you back. The other aspect of the predictions that I want to go into is like, I would love to see each caster say like, oh, I think it's 80% likely that this team is going to win this game versus 65%. And then you calculate the outcomes based on that confidence. Yeah. And then you say like, well, in Vedius's predictions, Schalke is 50% likely to make the playoffs, but in the scenario, it's only 4%, right? So you at least have, and you can play a game with the casters that way too, about like how confident they are in a specific match. And especially for Super Week, where you would have to make those predictions across all these games really early on. I think it'd be fun. It'd be a fun way to play things out on the broadcast.
For sure.
I've got a question for you, Crownshot. Like, let's just scrap that topic. It's just a bunch of nonsense.
Okay. Sure.
I've got a question for you, right? So you know when Fnatic was doing really badly, and it was looking like they might just miss playoffs entirely, which seems impossible, right? You know, everyone kept flaming them. This is the weirdest angle to flame them on. Everyone kept flaming them that like it was LS giving advice that had ruined like Fnatic play.
Yeah.
But here's what I don't get about that Crownshot is, do people not listen to the casts? Dude, the shit that Fnatic was doing that was losing those games, LS would go mental if someone did that. Like if you picked any of those champions in a draft, LS was the coach. He'd fucking fire him after having a mental breakdown.
I think it's because people, obviously fans, will gravitate against blaming the players because they feel like an emotional, you know, obviously.
Connection,
connection. Oh, the coach did fucked up this in draft and did this. Oh, LS brainwashed this person. And I mean, in the end, like the player still has a huge say in what to play. Like it's not like.
Plus, he brainwashed you positively. You're doing great.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yes, but it's not like the coach is coming behind me with my mouse and being like, okay, you need to pick Twitch to pick this and this. Like the players still have a massive. Obviously, I don't know for Fnatic specifically, but like, so it's just fans trying to find excuses.
No, you're actually right, by the way. We heard earlier in the split, I can't remember what show I was listening to this on, but someone said earlier in the split, it might even have been Whipple, that actually Mithy is a coach where it's more like he like lets you pick the champion. So actually it sounds like the players are the ones picking it. Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes if the player, my idea is that if the coach was a player recently, he does. You know,
it makes sense. He thinks the players know best.
Yeah, exactly.
You should actually take that narrative though and start fucking with those haters. Like every time you have like a monster carry game on Ezreal, you should be like, well, what it is I actually warm up my mechanics by shuffling poker chips during the while I'm walking from fountain, and all the players either they'll be like, bullshit, he's not doing that, or they'll be like, well, I might start doing that. What type of poker chips? And then they'll just start doing it as well, you know.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I think. The narrative that like outside people of the org can affect draft and these things so much that they are at fault for the losses is a bit absurd, I guess is the word.
Except me and Monty, though. Me and Monty do actually control literally the wins and losses. So we're to blame if anyway. That's bullying them. And Monty's just ignorant against CSM. So that, except for us, you're right. But everyone else, I agree.
Especially Fnatic fans, right? I've been told so many times by Fnatic fans, I must have some sort of unholy power against that team, like performing well at international events based on how I'm treated on my predictions.
Yeah, I mean,
but to go back to Fnatic,
one of just special,
One of the
Yeah,
interesting
sorry,
things, like I'm so low on Fnatic heading into LEC playoffs, so low, because you think about it, and okay, in the last month, they've gone 5-4, but you have to look at who they actually beat. They only beat teams that didn't, the 4 teams that didn't make the playoffs and SK.
And one of them had a 10k gold lead on them and just gave it up inexplicably, the Misfits game.
Yes. And also, I don't really count matches that don't matter, like the Fnatic and SK one, to end this, because nothing was going to change for either of you guys if you won. I also think you should have won that game. So I look at this and I look at a Fnatic that...
Crownshot's also right, by the way. In theory, you should actually just waste that game if you're SK, and you should just do... Like, what's the point in giving away something that you might use in playoffs? There's no point.
Exactly.
That's not even an excuse when he says that. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I'm not saying we trolled the game, but the way we drafted is exactly the champs who play the whole split. So
exactly.
I mean, I also think Fnatic's form is not looking that good most games, but I don't know. There's just something in me that. Okay, so maybe talking specifically with the matchup against Rogue, I think. Anyway, I'm a bot laner, right? So all of my thoughts are...
Disclaimer. Yeah, okay, mate. Just give us your opinion. Come on.
Okay. Anyway,
fucking hell.
I think Reckless is just better than Hans, right? So I think they have an advantage here for sure. So and the meta also shifted away a bit from the champions Rogue plays bot. Like they used to really love, or I mean they do love Aphelios still, but the champion is much weaker than it was in spring or so. Like this champion used to take over games alone, while now it's much more controlled. So I think they can totally win there. So I wouldn't count them out completely against Rogue, and maybe even Rogue will go into the match with a bit more... I don't know, I don't know. I wouldn't call it relaxation, just a bit less fire, because they're already at Worlds, right? So I'm just assuming at this point. But I think out of the teams,
Fnatic should be hungrier.
Out of the teams they could get to play in playoffs, I think them getting Rogue might be the best matchup stylistically. So yeah, and I also
think with that, mate, is listen. I'm not a bot laner, so I can say this. First of all, there was going to be a massive fucking mid difference at all points of that game. So already Rogue's going to get their win condition. I'm with you. I actually think personally, I've never been a massive Hans Sama fan. I think he had a pretty good split. But if you want to talk historically, I would expect Reckless to be very good in the playoffs. Problem is, it's not a solo lane, mate. And I tell you what, support difference, I'm going fucking Rogue on that one, homie. So the problem I have with Fnatic is I don't know where they get the edges, mate. Like top lane, it doesn't really matter in this game. I guess technically they have the better jungler. That's about it. But even then, not massively. So
I mean, Inspired is pretty good, to be fair.
I think Inspired's pretty good. Yeah, I just think Sovereign is except from Shadow.
Yeah, he's very good. Yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm just. It will be interesting for sure. Like it also depends a lot on patch read and meta and how they draft.
Yeah.
I think it can be close.
Sorry, here's the thing, though. Don't ever downplay yourself like that. Don't be like, I'm just a poor little bot laner from Slovenia. What do I know? I'm just, can I say about God Reckless and all this? Fuck that shit. Like, you're a good player, mate. Just tell us what you think.
I'm going to totally stomp every bot laner that I get.
What's Alex been doing? He's not even hyping you up, mate. Like, we're going to make our own separate group where I'm going to fucking work on you mentally and take you to the next level, mate.
I'm trying. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's the spice I'm missing.
It's all right.
For sure. But,
listen, when I first met Forgiven, he was just a little choir boy. He was like, I don't know if I should be mean. I was like, come here. Let me have a talk with you.
Okay.
Not
maybe,
really, just being bad.
Maybe I should ask him for tips how to get into the enemy's mind.
Just don't ask him for tips from this year, because I'd probably do the opposite with everything he did this year.
Yeah, especially...
Forgiven, that Schalke team, the core of that team was shit, weren't they? Probably never do anything, will you fucking idiot? That's fucking you carry an LEC anymore, you dumb fuck. That's your legacy.
I do think it is depressing, though, to think about if Forgiven hadn't just given up on this roster, where they could be right now at the end of this playoff run.
Sure.
If he had... I mean, it does suck. Like, I feel bad for him not because of his actions, obviously. I don't think that he should have done what he did, but me as a personal viewer and somebody who was rooting for his return to the LEC and would have loved to have seen his redemption. Imagine how fucking awesome it would be right now if Schalke had been on this run with Forgiven. I would have loved that. It would have been great. It's a bummer.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously his legacy will be a bit tainted by this, but you can't deny the impact he had on bot lane in EU and the MVP splits and the triple bans into first pick and lane swap by Q Tigers and all of this.
Yeah, was a bummer. So let's talk about the. I think the Rogue Fnatic matchup is. I would be shocked if Rogue didn't 3-0, 3-1 this series. I think it's probably the least interesting matchup in the first round of the LEC playoffs. But I think what's super interesting is G2 versus Mad Lions, given that it's the rematch of the matchup we saw twice last playoffs, resulted in Mad Lions getting that big upset. Also, Mad Lions starting so dominantly this split, but ending a little bit weaker, whereas G2's been powering up. I expect G2 to take this series, but for me, this is probably the most exciting matchup in either LCS or LEC.
Wait there one sec. Can I just confirm, when you were saying all that about Fnatic before, you are still taking Rogue to win the series, right, Crownshot?
Me? Yeah, I guess so. I guess I see Rogue winning like 3-2.
Okay.
The thing is, it's hard for me to predict before I see how teams draft, but yeah, I guess obviously.
Yeah,
Rogue
just as a preliminary guess.
First.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rogue is first place. They just made World, so they're still obviously
if you're going to do a disclaimer before you start talking about fucking Fnatic, mate, don't do the disclaimer of just a bot laner. Your disclaimer should be like, obviously, I secretly, desperately need Self-Made and Nemesis to be good, and Bwippo is also another one of Ellis's children. Therefore, this is secretly my fucking hero. And then, Hillisang, who I probably secretly want to play with when he gets kicked off Fnatic. So this is all over the place.
I actually siphon power from Fnatic's performance. So
there you go.
No
wonder you have fucking problems making the playoffs.
Yeah, we're all connected from the 2018 year when we played together. But back to the G2 Mad matchup. I think it is interesting because their styles are a bit similar, of like early skirmishing and fighting and like explosive. Actually, like both bot lanes play multiple picks, right? Like Sona Lux and they played Senna Wukong first before anyone else, and in spring they were like the best team besides G2 at playing Syndra bot and all of this. So it's for sure gonna be exciting. But I would always bet money on G2 if you would ask me. Like, not that I would, but theoretically, yeah, I would say G2 wins that, like maybe 3-1. Something like that.
By the way, go on. What was that?
If you just look at the trajectories of the two teams, they're like absolutely opposite. And then Wunder is having a very good split again, and Caps is very good. And I think Mad Lions' best player is, or like their hardest carry is Humanoid. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, another tweet I actually made, Monty, along these lines was, this is also why this format and the way that you do the Super Week is so rough. Right? Imagine this. 2 weeks ago, Mad Lions were like, awesome. As long as things hold, we get the number 1 seed, we qualify to Worlds, this is all going to be awesome. We might win the split. All of a sudden, literally just losing like a best of 1 or something has put them in a position where they have a way harder time to go to Worlds. Because if you top spot, you're at Worlds already. Now they have to potentially beat G2. If not beat G2, do an epic run through the low bracket. Fucking hell, this is getting hard now, man. Like, this is actually like, it's going to be depressing if they don't make it. Which they should make it still, I'll be real, even though obviously Crownshot here is hoping secretly he beats them, but they probably should make it because 4 teams do, but they made it harder on themselves for sure, just from a fucking best of 1. But then again, they did lose to Schalke, so what can you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the format is a bit weird. I don't know. I mean, it's also maybe a bit off topic, but it's also weird to me that every region has a wildly different format for play. It makes like, how do you know that the best 4 teams are going for every region if in a team with 5-13 can make it to playoffs, and then like spring doesn't even matter there, while in EU it matters a huge amount, and in Korea it matters a huge amount, and in Korea the first place team only plays 1 best of 5, and How does this make sense? Like,
Okay. So let's go back. I guess we're going to talk about formats again.
Sure.
So I'm not
okay.
I'm not the hugest fan of the end of the season excitement for LCK, just because the playoffs are very short for the most part. There aren't that many games. But what I will say is that because they play best of threes, you have many more games over the course of an LCK season. And because you're already testing to see who is more adaptable in a best of series, I don't mind that the playoffs are less important than relative to the regular season, right? Whereas
that's fair.
in LCS and LEC, when you're playing best of ones, well, you want to see the best of fives or whatever, because that's the actual chance to adapt and play the format that I think is better competitively. So as long as you qualify for the playoffs via best of one, that's where, to me, the real test of teams begins. Whereas I think that LPL and LCK teams are more constantly tested because they're playing 2 to 3 more games. They play 2 or 3 games for every one that you play, right? And they also are constantly honing that adapting skill. So yeah, I don't think it's crazy exciting, but I do think that the format is at least internally consistent in LCK. Now,
I agree.
We've talked about this previously, but what frustrates me about the format in LEC is that you're getting points for 2 different reasons. In spring, you're getting points for who is the best in best of fives. In summer, you're getting points for who is the best in best of ones. And to me, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you need to test along the same variable in order for that to have an effect and in order for that to actually have meaning. So that's why my frustration comes into how these playoffs are seeded. I just find it. I think kind of
Wunder
annoying.
made a tweet about it. I think Wunder made a tweet about it, like that first in spring playoffs plus third in summer regular is less than fourth or fifth, even fifth, right? Fifth in spring playoffs and first in summer regular.
Yep.
For sure, it's a bit weird. Yeah. Just one quick question: do you know if the first best of series in NA between the 8th and 17th is best of 5 or is best of 3, or do they actually play full best of 5?
I think best of 5. I'm assuming.
I don't
assumption.
know.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm looked into it though.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It because I don't think the last year format where you just played playoffs and then you got points and then you played Gauntlet, I don't think it was that bad of a format for LEC. I think it made sense, right? You first seed plays fourth and or chooses who they play, and second seed plays third, and fifth and sixth play, and then you get points, and then you have chances in Gauntlet to prove yourself again. I guess it's a bit different because there is 4 seeds now, which
I think, I agree with you.
So,
I think that if you're going to give credit for how teams perform across the year, that the Gauntlet is a better format. I think that it's just, if you're prioritizing only recent performance, so you have insane recency bias to send teams to Worlds, then you do what LCS does and you just say, okay, that's what we're doing, and it's about the standings. You're seeded based on the standings of summer only. I just think that this format splits the difference in a super weird way that doesn't make sense to me, personally.
Yeah, for sure. That's back to my point of they're just different in regions. And it does not care about spring, while you does. So I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Obviously, in a perfect world, there would be an international league where everybody played against each other so much more. But
back to that, the League of Legends Super League that we were discussing earlier. Did you have any thoughts on that? Is that something that you would rather have as a competitive player? Is that something you would rather aspire to? Or
I didn't catch the whole. I came in to where you guys talking about about the league where. Every best team from every region would be, or just teams from every...
So basically, Crownshot, the premise is this.
Basically, think of football where the Champions League brings the best from all the leagues into a Super League, and you play that. He wants that for so because Worlds is not really a big enough format in that sense. So he wants a Super League for all the best teams in all the world.
Except I don't want them to
be with SK, but you'd be watching with the rest of us. So what would you like to do?
Well, I also no. It's different than Champions League because I I don't want them to go back to their regional leagues. I just want Champions League to exist
they would be in this
all
league.
the time.
I didn't get that part.
I just want them to exist I just want only Champions League, right?
Oh, okay.
And I want the regional leagues to feed players. So it's not that you wouldn't be in there, Crownshot.
Right.
You just might be on a different team. You would just have to be one of the best, if there are 20 teams, best 100 players in the world in order to be on that team.
Right, okay.
Oh, so like you could like mix regions on teams? Or
Yeah, you get rid of region locking. You get rid of region locking. You have one league with 20 or 24 teams in it, and you just play that year round, and you say LEC is now the equivalent of EU Masters. It's the feeder league that is played locally in Europe, but the best teams from LEC are then selected or presumably signed to head into League of Legends Super League.
I mean, that would be... I guess that would be fun, but then, so would that replace Worlds, or would Worlds just qualify?
So what I would do is, again, this is never going to happen because it's too complicated to change it, but I would take Worlds, and then I would have all the regional leagues under the Super League play once a year in a tournament so that you could get a better chance of to see who the up-and-coming players are from each and every region. And then Worlds would be replaced by the playoffs of the Super League.
Okay, I that does sound like I think it would be very Chinese and Korean dominated though. Like
but we had this conversation before, which is that
to Monty, that's a feature, not a bug.
That's true.
Yeah, okay.
Look, man. I don't really care because I want the best teams to win. But the counterpoint to that was that in other esports that do have significant, like a top level competition that happens internationally constantly, it really hasn't been dominated necessarily by players from a specific region. It's been dominated by teams, but in CSGO, for example, there's been a good churn. For the most part, you've seen European and NA teams win majors now. You've seen, Liquid be one of the top 2 teams in the world, despite being a North American roster. In Overwatch League, you saw early Korean dominance when it was all separated, but as soon as Overwatch League started, mixed roster teams of both Western and Korean players playing together started winning the titles. So, and also North American players got significantly better by playing against the top level of competition. So I agree with you. In the short term, I believe it would be that way. In the long term, I do not think it would be that way.
Yeah, that's very fair. Yeah. I mean, that would be for sure exciting to watch or playing, for sure. Yeah, obviously more international competition is always better because the meta is so different in every region, or the champions that people play, or even if you compare the way people play top lane in EU compared to Korea, is completely different. In EU, it's like Shen, Mundo, Ornn. In Korea, it's Jace, Wukong, Kennen, carry top laners. A completely different, idea of the perception of the game, And it's obviously always exciting to see different styles clash. So.
By the way, does anyone in this call not have G2 winning the split?
No, I think G2 will win the split.
I think they won.
Okay, because the problem is I think all 3 of us think that. So I don't know if there's much point diving into that much.
Yeah, I think G2 will win for sure.
I also think that part of G2 winning has to do with the fact that Rogue is not as motivated because they've automatically qualified for the World Championship.
By the way, when fans go mental on that, he just means theoretically they aren't. As in, listen, maybe they are. Maybe to them it's life or death to win LEC. Maybe it is. But what he means is when you already know you've made Worlds, it's only human to a little bit think in the back of your... In fact, this is what you do. You think in the back of your mind, listen, obviously we want to win LEC, but worst case scenario, we're in Worlds already. That's where you've opened the door to maybe just lose twice and go out, but you go to Worlds anyway, So I know what Monty means by that.
Yeah.
See, that's how we've got Monty. 6 years later, I'm the one explaining for you why what you said shouldn't make people be mad. That's the fucking... Look at that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
I agree. Yeah.
So what character would you say Reginald would be like in fiction, Monty?
Jesus.
Go on, Crownshot. Come on, mate.
Yeah, I mean, my only point was that also winning 4 in a row for G2 must be a motivating factor because it's very... extremely rare. So
oh no, listen, G2 also have that factor. If you watch, you probably watched it, that The Last Dance documentary that everyone was loving, the Michael Jordan one.
I watched it, yeah.
You know, the factor that they bring up there, which is a real thing, that Michael Jordan, just like, by the way, Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, some very like legendary competitors, weren't just the best players, but because they were like competitors, that was their main thing. They looked for any little story or reason as to why you're like, if you're my opponent, it's like I'm looking for a reason as to what to hate you, like that you fucked with me. Yeah. So even if you just say something like, "Yeah, I think he's a good player," I'm like, "Good, I'm the best. I'm going to show you I'm the fucking best." So G2 basically is like that because G2's had so much success, and especially after the spring split where they fucked around and still won the split. It's understandable as to why, even without Perks' issues, I don't think they would have been like dominant and ever gone like 14-4 anyway. But I always thought that is exactly what they will need, because when they take the losses and when they have like a team like Mad Lions and Rogue who've never been there to the championship before, being like, we're the best, look at us, top of the standings. That's what G2 needs to make them think, right, this is our fucking worlds now, this playoff, and we're going to show them we're going to win all these series in a row. We're going to smash them all. And at the end, what are they going to say? Like, that's a great way to get a bunch of people who otherwise are a little bit jaded at playing in LEC playoffs. Remember, someone like Perks doesn't know what it's like to finish below. Like, isn't his worst ever finish in playoffs like 5th to 8th once? I think he finished 5th to 6th that one split, maybe, ever. And that was it. That was like summer of season 8 or whatever. Aside from that, he's been in the finals every time. Like, this dude doesn't even understand. Like, he doesn't know what like a normal split's like for someone. So when you've played that many splits, and it's so reckless, when you've been in the semis like every single time, you sometimes need an extra reason to get your motor going, as it were. And this is a great reason to get going.
Also, isn't it true that G2 has only lost 2 best of 5s in the last 2 years? One of them was the World Finals, and the other one was versus Mad Lions in spring.
Yes.
Yep.
So, I don't like betting against teams that are so insanely consistent again in best of 5s, right? They have to be the favorite to win.
Yeah.
One thing I do wonder, though, is I want to ask you about this actually, Crownshot, because obviously you might scrim against them, so you might have extra information. One of the old factors that used to be really fun about G2 as well is, I mean, SK Telecom found this out the hard way at MSI. Even in really important games, they would do those crazy drafts. They would just pull some shit out where you're like, what the fuck? This isn't the standard, and they would just go for shit. Like, in scrims, do they actually do that now? Like, do they seem like they have like secret picks that they could be preparing or something that we might see in playoffs? You think they'll be that sort of team still?
I mean, I didn't scrim them that much this season, but like from the nature of their players, I'm sure they do. Like, it would make perfect sense to me that they do. I can't say because I actually didn't scrim them that much, but
fair enough.
Like, if you look at all of their players and the sheer like, especially Caps, right? Like he thought of like the Kog'Maw thing in spring out of a dream or something, but I think they will prepare something for sure, because they obviously also they're in the winners bracket, right? So they can afford to lose a game or two in a best of 5. Like, they can try things for sure.
Here's the thing, I'm with you though, that story, like, if this is a movie, that's a great story, Crownshot. It's so fucking it's like, I just hope at this point fucking Caps doesn't have a dream about killing his own son Isaac, otherwise it might just fucking go bad for that boy if he ever has one. Fucking
obviously,
there we go. That's my new thing as well. Read the Bible, Caps. Just read the Bible. Get your life together. What are you doing?
Yeah, it was a bit fun. I mean, it was a bit probably dramatic.
Exactly. Who's this motherfucker? Nebuchadnezzar or something? Ezekiel game? Reference game on point. None of you even know. You don't even read the Bible, do you? People who watch this show. You make me sick. You're going to hell.
Well, it's also, you're making Old Testament references, so even more obscure sometimes.
So, listen, unpopular opinion, better of the 2 testaments. You know, the second one was all wishy-washy fucking crystal shit. The first one's like, listen, this is the size of my dick. This is what I'll do with it if you don't fucking do what I say. Like, fucking hell, all right.
Old Testament was metal as fuck. Old Testament was metal as fuck.
Of course, yeah. Dude, the Old Testament was like, this guy fucking threw eggs at my window, so go to his village, destroy his line to the 7th generation and smote their ashes to the end. They're like, fucking hell, it's just an egg. Like, that's the Old Testament in a nutshell for you. God just basically, it's a bit like me. He just didn't have enough sleep one day. He got a bit triggered and he went way overboard with his rant. Old school summoning insight.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We can always make the literary references here. You can count on us for that at the very least. And we won't even go into Gnosticism and why people would even believe that Old Testament God was an asshole, and only Gnosticism actually explains that. Guys, Otherwise, the pivot to the New Testament God doesn't make any sense unless you believe in Gnosticism.
You'd think people in a Riot Games game would understand the premise that the God of the universe who created it all, he did create it all, actually is a fuck-up who's doing everything wrong, a complete hypocrite, and doesn't really seem to have what's best for the people in his world in mind. I figured you guys would maybe be able to... Nah. Lost on you. Keep going. Just keep going. Keep going.
Truly, we need a Messiah. That's all I'm going to say. Truly,
we just
need
a Messiah. We need the fucking sauce. Basically, we need Ice Frog to come back, enter into this realm. You probably have to become a player to do it. Die like a martyr. But in doing so, shows that you could break free and transcend this shit game.
We're still
League
waiting.
of Legends.
We're still
That's
waiting.
right, Riot, because I'm not in the game. I can say your game's shit and you can't even ban me. Because in the real world... I've told Riot this before. I've told them to their face when people are trying to back channel. I literally, listen, I'll tell everyone a little quick fun anecdote. Some Riot guy once came to me as a back channel and started actually telling me, Thorin, listen, this isn't official, but if you were just to, kind of keep it quiet with some of the criticism, just maybe don't say anything for a couple of years. I'm not going to say you are. I can't promise anything, but you might be able to get on the Worlds. You might be able to work it. And I had to go was that what this is all about? I had to go, listen, mate, two things. One, I know you don't get this, but I've done 6 CSGO majors. I don't give a fuck about working Worlds in League of Legends. I think it's a shit format as well. And two, I don't know, I know you guys don't get this, but I operate solely in the real world, and the real world, you have no jurisdiction over. Inside the video game League of Legends, all those pro players, they're at your beck and call. They're at your mercy. You can do whatever you want to them. You are their god. I live in the real world, and you have zero jurisdiction over me. So get the fuck out of my face. And by the way, the irony is, I actually thought about this the other day. This is why I'm bringing it up. The time span as to when I had to not criticize them would have run out just after this split, Monty. So if I had to just not say anything towards the end of the split, that makes me think they have some sort of technology where they can see into the future. Because that's almost like they were saying to me, Monty, listen, no reason why, but if you just don't criticize us sort of towards the end of summer split 2020, then you get to do Worlds. That's weird. Why would you offer me that? Listen, don't ask why. Just do you agree to do it or not? It's there's something. That's like someone. He was a time traveler, wasn't he? That was a time traveler. That's how they're trying to fix the Neon deal. The Saudis have got time travel technology, and they've sent back this back channel guy to talk to me because they know if I don't go off on Twitter, it never gets quite as big. So it almost worked out, but much like the Terminator, the past can change as well. There's a lesson for you, right? But there's a lot of references towards the end. They'll probably have to end the show. I reckon.
Beam Gumbo.
Exactly.
All right, Crownshot. Do you have any parting thoughts about LEC playoffs? Is there a team that you think has a chance of creating an upset or making Worlds? Who are your top 3 teams that are making the World Championship? What's
your favorite holy book? Morellicon? Keep going. Who do you think makes Worlds from Riot?
So top 4, right?
Top 4, yes, that's fair. Worlds.
Yeah.
Worlds.
So Rogue is already qualified, right?
Yes. So you have to pick Rogue.
Rogue, G2.
You picked G2 to win, so G2, yeah. Who are the other two?
Yeah, Rogue, G2 for sure, and I'll put us and Fnatic.
Oh, Mad Lions goes below Fnatic. Right, you know what? I'm going the other way. You're a hater, mate. You're putting Fnatic over Mad Lions. Fuck you, Crownshot.
Oh, okay.
You got to put Fnatic over Mad Lions. Listen, the rest of it was with you with, but that's a mad... Yeah.
No, it all it all depends on the first best of 5, I guess, because that also depends who we play in the in series.
Yeah. So
if I want, yeah.
The thing is, so here's the thing. Here's the thing, Thorin.
Fnatic winning. If I have Fnatic winning the first series, then we will play Mad Lions automatically because Rogue is first.
That makes
seed,
sense. Okay,
so we can never play them. I'm basing it on that.
Yeah.
Right, even Crownshot's not crazy enough to predict that Fnatic beats Mad Lions in best 5. Right. Thank you. Order is being restored at the end. Thank you.
So the way the format works is that if the favorites win, so if Rogue and G2 win their matches, then Mad Lions is placed into the winner later in the bracket, basically. So Fnatic is the 4th seed. Yes. So if Fnatic loses, they will automatically play the winner of SK versus Schalke, in which case I think there is a very real scenario where the teams are, because I think you'll beat Schalke and I think you can beat Fnatic. So I actually think you take the 4th spot to go to Worlds.
Yeah, I mean, obviously depends how well we would develop in this 1 week and a half and in the playoffs, but I think the chance is pretty decent, I would say.
The only teams in the last month.
If you do play Fnatic and beat them, the second Fnatic loses, it's going to be like if everyone remembers back in the day when TSM used to go to Worlds, a long, long time ago now. Back when they used to get eliminated from Worlds, I had a little tradition where I would sort of get very smug and tweet really like, self-congratulatory things. It'd be hard to tell the difference from normal, but it'll just be a little bit more of that. So all I'm going to say is I'm going to have a motherfucking field day, Hobie. So if you play Fnatic, I'm going to be the biggest Crownshot fan of all time. I'm going to be going off. Let's do it.
You can as motivation for sure.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure. I just need a Jordan-esque reason to hate someone there.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Self-made betrayed you and left, so the Brotherhood's broken already. Nemesis is over there. What, couldn't they just put Crownshot along as well? Can't we just make the team again? What the fuck's this shit? They left you in SK to die, homie. You climbed out that bin pit. It's time to make them fucking suffer. You should just go like, it can be very painful to play SK in the series. That's what you should do.
That's actually very
Self-made left you like, he thought they had to find one in the wreckage. You know? He left you in that plane to die. So, now everything's just a reference to the apparently. I don't know.
I rose up from the grave.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. It will be
the ghost of Madeline's past.
I love it. That's actually good. And also beating Madeline's would also be good because it's all it's actually it's all up to me. Like motivation is at an extremely high level. So
and then the motivation of beating Schalke is easy. It's just to remind Gilius that like Gilius, wake up. Oh shit, was that all a dream? Fuck, I thought I went on like a 7-game streak and I was good now. It's like, no, that was just a dream, mate. You were having a fever dream. You had too much Calpol.
I mean, to be fair, also the Schalke support is my ex-support dreams. So there's also something there. There's something everywhere.
Listen, lane support. She's literally not even on the same fucking team anymore.
Yeah, it's actually true.
The league, though. Still was bottom of the league for most of the time, though. Who was heavier? That's all I'm saying.
By the way, when the key that I've learned to win Thorin is feeling especially amused at the outcomes is when he posts that meme of himself on Tom Cruise's body where it's the laughing meme.
Classic.
That one is definitely
that's how I know. Well crafted, wasn't it?
That's how I know Thorin's really
time
happy.
to find like the right shape, like which direction my head was or whatever to make it look good. So it actually looks legit, doesn't it? Because it looks like I really am like.
It's either that or just a tweet that's
on the internet.
It's just that or the tweet of 240 characters that's just ha 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 ha. That's the other one. Those are the two keys to understanding when Thorin is truly enjoying the Schadenfreude results of something, for sure.
So that's what people don't understand. They don't even understand the flavor of haterism that I distribute. I've always wanted TSM to Worlds because otherwise I don't get to enjoy that moment, do I? It's not as funny if they just don't make playoffs in NA or like go out in the first round. That's just shit. They have to listen, the whole point is their punishment must be more severe. They have to get to Worlds so they can have their hearts broken and they can literally have like a wound put into their soul that they'll probably never recover from. And no amount of money or Fortnite games or guides will ever make up for that hole that's just draining your essence away and then And by the way, I even had a joke for that, but like, sadly, I forgot. I didn't come up with it in time, Monty, because my joke was going to be like, obviously, there's no real good name for the matchup of Team Liquid and TSM because they haven't had a long enough history of battling each other. They have like a rivalry. So my joke was going to be something like the Lenovo Wars because we have like the telecom wars in Korea. It'd be something like that, We need something like that for those two teams that they play. I'll keep working on it. We'll come up with something.
Both of them have been pretty disappointing at the World Championship so far. So it is kind of the battle of the world's razor cakes in a way, where whatever their domestic performance is, always getting super hyped for it, but always letting you down, cutting your mouth up as you eat that cake one more year. That's for sure. Oh boy. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Crownshot. We'll be back next week after the first round of LCS playoffs to discuss. Might be a shorter show. Maybe we'll talk about some other regions while we wait for some of the LEC games to start week after that. So thanks for joining us. Been fun.
Thank you very much. It has been fun.